So in today's video, we will be talking about router in ReactJS. React router is React router is a standard library for routing in React. It enables the navigation among views of various components in a React application, allows changing the browser URL and keeps the UI in sync with the URL. Talking about React routers, why is React router needed? So, talking about this question, in that context, React router is not necessary at all. That means create React app is the basic thing to run a React application. We do not require necessarily a React router in our application to run it. That said, React router is rich with navigational components that compose declaratively with our application, which can be very useful for larger and more complex navigational requirements in React application. It is also great for React native applications. Another important question comes, what is the advantage of a React router? So, talking about the pros and cons of client-side routing with React is that the performance of the front end of a website is directly affected by things like the number of pages loaded initially, the amount of data fetched and displayed, and the time taken to switch from one page to another. Client-side rendering and routing give a subtle sense performance to your application, and it is essential to use the power of your front-end framework to your advantage. Routing is the process through which the user is navigated to different pages on a website. For example, if your application has three different pages, the main home page, the login page, and the cart page. So, using routing, you will visit these three pages. You will be navigated to the different pages inside your app. Rendering is the process of putting those pages on the UI. Every time you request a route to a particular page, you are also rendering that page, but not every render is an outcome of the route. Now, talking about the pros and cons of routing. Routing between components is fast as the amount of data that renders is less. As the amount of data rendered is less. The rest of the data is rendered by the DOM, and even when there's tons of HTML and CSS to render, the DOM handles that part in the blink of an eye. Using lazy loading, any delay in rendering HTML is compensated for. The second pro is for better user experience. Animation and transitions can be easily implemented when switching between different components. So this is a very big advantage of using routing, that is animations and transitions will be smooth. The third advantage is it gives a real sense of a single page application. No separate pages are rendered and the current page does not refresh to load a new view. So these were the pros of routing and React Router. Talking about the cons. The initial loading time is considerably large. All the routes, components, and HTML have to be loaded at once when the application first mounts. The whole website or web app needs to be loaded on the first request. The second disadvantage is there is unnecessary data download. Download time for unusable views. That cannot be anticipated on the first render of the application. The third biggest disadvantage is it generally requires an external library, which means more code and more dependency on external package, unlike routing on the server side. The last most biggest disadvantage is client side routing and rendering convert JavaScript to HTML, making search engine crawling less optimized. So these were server side routing pros and cons. Now we are going to talk about client-side routing in React. So React renders the appropriate information on the DOM using its component structure. Client-side routing in React helps to maintain the seamless user experience that a typical single-page application promises. This is achieved through an external React library called React Router. React Router uses dynamic routing. This ensures that routing is achieved as it is requested by the user. This also means that all the required components are also rendered without any flashes of white screen and without page reload. So the main aim of using React in the beginning we talked about was that there must not be any page reload. So server side routing caused this type of problem. So to correct that, we talk about client side routing. And the biggest library we use here is the React router. So for setting up the React router, we have a few steps. So for installing the React router, we have to install the following library. So we will go to, let us first see the command and then we will install it. So installation, the installation command is simply npm install react dash router dash dom. If you're using yarn, then you will have to use the command for yarn. So let us go ahead and install it. So npm install react router dom, and will start to download and will finish itself in a few minutes. Let us now see a simple example of using the React router. We will just see the hard code of how it has to be coded, and then we will see one or two examples later on in some other video. So I'm inside my app.js, and we will be importing the React router first of all. So we do not need any of these, so we will just get rid of this. So we are going to import a few things. So here we will import browser router as router comma switch root and link from React router DOM. So next, inside our function app, inside the return, we will not require any div. So here we will open tag of router, and inside this we will have our div, and let us say a nav. So inside the div we are going to have a nav, and then we will start coding. Inside the nav we are going to have an unordered list and then an actual list. This list is going to have a link tag. So here we are going to link to, and then we are going to apply the address. That is, the initially it is default, so we are giving it the home. The link has the name home. After that we are going to add a few more links, that is inside our list we will be having a few more items. The link tag is important to give a good user experience because it does not causes page reloading. So next is our link, where again we are going to use the link to, and then we will add backslash, and we will give the address about, and this is going to take us to a new page, that is the about page, which is also named about. So only the backslash inside the link is the default link. This is going to keep us in the same. After that we are going to add the third link, that is link to backslash users. This is going to have the name also users. So we will have three links inside our application. The first one is home, the second one is about, and the third one is users. We can switch between these and we will see the change in the URL of our localhost. After the nav we will be having a switch tag. Inside this switch tag we will be adding the main functions and the roots. So inside that we will have a root which will have the path by which these links will be linked to. So here we will be mentioning the paths of the URL, that is first one is backslash about, and inside this we are going to have an about tag. Currently we do not have any about component or any function named about, so we will be creating that just after we complete the switch statement. And now we will copy this and we will paste it for the rest of the two links, and instead of about we will be changing it to users, and the component is also named users. This is not a component, it will be just a function. And the last one in the root tag is always the default tag, which is the backslash, only the backslash, and that will be our home function. So we will just name it home. Now we need to create these three components or functions. So here, like we have the about, the user, and the home. You can create different components and then link them into your page. So we will just keep it short, and we will be creating functions named about, users, and home. So our function home is just going to return home. So it is just going to have a return statement where inside an h2 it is going to display home. Similarly, we will have functions for about and then users. You can see that the red line is now gone because there is no more error. So next we will be writing function about. This function is going to return the h2 with about, and the last one is the function users. So the users is again going to return an h2 with users. Instead of functions, you can add components here, and then you will be taken to a different page. This is useful when we are creating a cart or something where we can link the page. You can go to a dashboard, you can go to the cart, or you can go to the shopping list. So now we'll save our files and we will have a look at the output. You must be aware that switch statements have been replaced in the later versions after the version 5 of React Router DOM. So make sure that you're using that version itself, otherwise you will be having an error. So now if you see, then we have three lists: home, about, and users. So whenever we click on the users, then you can see user appears, about appears, and the change in the URL in the local host, and the default URL is for the home. So that is it for today. I will see you in the next video.